The Hoop Heads Podcast is brought to you by Head Start Basketball.
Hey Hoopheads! Wanted to take a minute to shout out our partners and friends at Dr. Dish Basketball. Their Dr. Dish shooting machines are undoubtedly the most advanced and user-friendly machines on the market, and they truly accelerate skill development faster than ever. Learn more at drdishbasketball.com and follow their incredible content at Dr. Dish B-Ball on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Mention the Hoopheads podcast and save an extra $300 on the Dr. Dish Rebel, All-Star, and CT models. Also, make sure to check out the new Dr. Dish Home Machine, which is perfect for these crazy times when gyms and schools are closed. Visit drdishbasketball.com for details. That's a great deal, Hoopheads. Get your Dr. Dish shooting machine today.
Hi, this is Jim Saris from the Saris Skills Academy, and you're listening to the Hoop Heads podcast.
Prepare like the pros with the all-new Fast Draw and Fast Scout. Fast Draw has been the #1 play diagramming software for coaches for years, and now with its integrated web platform, coaches have the ability to add video to plays and share them directly to their players' Android and iPhones via their mobile app. You'll quickly see why Fast Model Sports has the most compelling and intuitive basketball software out there. In addition to a great product, they also provide basketball coaching content and resources through their blog and play bank. For access to these plays and more information, visit fastmodelsports.com or follow them on Twitter at fastmodel.
Initially, with a lot of guys, if they think about Division III, and I say this all the time, they think that you're almost insulting them, and it's like you don't really get it. I mean, it's really good basketball for sort of normal-sized people.
Kevin Byrne is in his 3rd season as the boys varsity basketball head coach at Walsh Jesuit High School in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. Prior to returning to his alma mater, Byrne was the assistant men's basketball coach at Akron University for 2 seasons. Before his D1 stint with the Zips, Byrne was the head men's basketball coach at Ohio Northern University. While at Ohio Northern, Byrne guided the Polar Bears to a 41-38 record, a winning percentage of .519. ONU had a 16-10 record and finished 4th in the OAC in 2013-2014. Byrne went to Ohio Northern after a 4-year stint at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where he served as their associate head coach. Prior to MIT, Byrne was the assistant coach at his alma mater, Carnegie Mellon. During Byrne's 8-year tenure, the team set school records for wins with 19 and experienced the first 20-win season and first ever UAA Conference Championship. After graduating from CMU, Byrne enjoyed a 3-year professional career, playing in England and Ireland. While at Carnegie Mellon, he graduated as the 3rd all-time leading scorer and 5th all-time leading rebounder. Byrne's class graduated with the most wins of any graduating class in Carnegie Mellon basketball history. We recently launched the Hoopheads Mentorship Program. We believe that having a mentor is the best way to maximize your potential and become a transformational coach. By matching you up with one of our experienced mentors, you'll develop a one-on-one relationship that will help your coaching, your team, your program, and your mindset. The Hoopheads Mentorship Program delivers mentoring services to basketball coaches at all levels through our team of experienced head coaches. Find out more at hoopheadspod.com or shoot me an email directly, mike@hoopheadspod.com. Our roster of shows is growing, so don't forget to check out all our other podcasts on the Hoopheads Pod Network, including Thrive with Trevor Huffman, Beyond the Ball, the CoachMaze.com podcast, Players Court, Bleachers and Boards, and our team-focused NBA podcasts, Cavaliers Central, Grizz and Grind, Nuck If You Buck, The 305 Culture, Blazing the Path, #Lakers, Motor City Hoops, Spanning the Spurs, and X's and O's NBA Breakdown. The LA Hoops Report is coming soon. We're looking for more NBA podcasters interested in hosting their own show centered on a particular team. Email us info@hoopheadspod.com if you're interested in learning more and bringing your talent to our network. Take some notes as you listen to this episode with Kevin Byrne, boys basketball varsity head coach at Walsh Jesuit High School in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. Hello and welcome to the Hoopheads Podcast. It's Mike Klinzing here with my co-host Jason Sunkel. And tonight we are pleased to welcome to the podcast from Walsh Jesuit High School here in the state of Ohio, Kevin Byrne. Kevin, welcome to the Hoopheads Pod.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. We are excited to be able to have you on, get a chance to dive into the variety of different things that you've been able to do in the game of basketball over your career. I want to start by going back in time to when you were a kid. Tell us a little bit about your first experiences with the game of basketball and what made you fall in love with it.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I kind of tried all the sports. When I was a very young kid, 6, 7 years old, and basketball ended up being the sport that I liked playing the most and the sport that I was best at. And so I was really blessed to have some really positive experiences in kind of those early formative years. I grew up in Stowe, and we had a really good sort of, league for little kids back then. A guy named John Stein ran the league and was just sort of as good a role model as you could have had, for somebody learning to play basketball when they were, 7 or 8 years old. He made it fun. It was fun. It was just fun to play. It was just a really, you always look forward to the game that week. And so I really attribute a lot of it to him. And, I went to Holy Family Grade School and played in CYO basketball through the 5th through 8th grade. And actually, TK Griffith, the head coach at Hoban, his father was my basketball coach when I was in 5th and 6th grade. And again, just a great guy and just so much fun to play for and made it fun growing up. So I was really fortunate. I had really good coaches and really good people around me when I was young, teaching me how to play basketball and making it enjoyable, and you get better at it. And so that was kind of where it all started.
What do you remember about those times in terms of what those guys did to make the game fun for you? Is there anything specific that you can point to that you remember, or was it more just a case of you looking back and just looking on that fondly saying, wow, I just remember how fun it was to be able to play basketball underneath those two guys?
Yeah, I think that it was both of those a little bit. I mean, you definitely look back and just remember it being something you really enjoyed doing and being around them. But I think they had a really good mix of teaching you how to play and to get better, even in 3rd and 4th grade, and then as I got a little older into kind of 5th and 6th grade with Mr. Griffith. So they were helping you become a better player, and so that was fun. But did it in a way that it also was, kind of an enjoyable experience and something that you look forward to doing. Back then you only practiced, once or twice a week and played a game on the weekends, that kind of thing. But you always look forward to it. You always wanted to go. It was just something that you, at least for me, and I think for my friends too. I mean, it was something that we really enjoyed doing, and we're really blessed to have guys like those two guys and others. Tom Goodall was my 7th grade coach and was TK's assistant and his father's best friend. And again, there wasn't a better guy. There's no better person that's walked the earth than Tom Goodall. Unfortunately, he and Tim Griffith have both passed away, but they were, they were gone too soon. But they were, to this day, kind of instrumental, role models. When I think of why did I end up getting into basketball, it certainly goes back to those guys.
As your level of seriousness started to increase when it came to the game of basketball, what did you begin to do? What did your, let's say, summer off seasons look like in junior high and high school as you started to take the game more seriously? Were you playing pickup games? Were you working on a game on your own? Probably a combination of the two. Just talk a little bit about what your experiences were once you started to take the game more seriously, what that meant for you as a basketball player.
Yeah, I think that it was, I played AAU as I got older and into high school, but it wasn't quite what it is now. I mean, we definitely played, but it wasn't sort of the industry that it's become in maybe the last 20 years. I was probably just before kind of all that. So you find a team and a couple guys on your team and a couple guys on a team down the street would play, and you'd kind of play around here and do some of that stuff. What I do remember doing through high school was, as you said, trying to work on my game on my own, but we also played every day. Just outside, there were some courts over in Talmadge, and really good players, kind of all walks of life. We had some older guys who had been really good college players. Joe Jakubik used to come and play, and down to us high school guys, and really competitive games. And you'd show up every day and you'd get there early so you could get on the court quick, because there was a lot of people that wanted to play. And then you tried to get a team that could win, so you could stay out there and wouldn't have to sit 3 or 4 games if you lost. So yeah, we used to go. Those courts are gone now. Actually, they're behind the police station over in Talmadge, and we used to go and play every day. Every day we'd go, and I had a brother who's about my age who was a really good player, and he and I used to hop in the car and drive over there, and literally you didn't miss it. I mean, we were there 5 or 6 days a week, as I recall. I mean, we played just about every day, and again, really good games and guys who could help you. Just watching them play, you'd learn from it. Some guys had gotten into coaching and would help you out a little bit if they saw something they thought you could work on and do a little better. So, I don't know. I think it still goes on, but I don't know if there's much of that sort of thing anymore. Just going and playing pickup, just going down to the park and playing. So that's a lot of what we did.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you find when you have conversations with your kids, or even when you're coaching at the college level, do you find that any of your current players, or let's say players in the last 5 to 10 years, are they playing much outdoor basketball anymore?
Not as much, I don't think. Everything kind of revolves around doing some kind of, at least organized or semi-organized thing in the summer, whether it's being on a kind of a big-time AAU team or sometimes maybe especially for the guys in high school, and or get some guys who are coming into Walsh who play some kind of fall ball and that kind of thing. But no, I think, I do have one player who likes to play for me right now at Walsh, and he'll mention going down to the park every now and then and playing, kind of 2-on-2 with his friends and that kind of thing. But I think it's a little different now than it was kind of what I'm talking about, where it was almost kind of the main thing we did. Yeah,
absolutely. It's just a totally different world. I always say that I feel bad for the kids of today that they missed out on some of those experiences that you had, I'm sure, and the ones that I had, where you got a chance to play with people from all different walks of life, all different ages. And there's clearly things that are positive about the system that we have today, and kids get a lot more gym access than they ever did when you and I were kids.
Yeah, sure.
And that's something that's completely different. But I do feel like, and I would have loved the system today too, because I would have loved to play 30, 40, 50 games in a summer and all those kinds of things. But I played probably hundreds, if not thousands of games in the summer, because I was just playing, whether it was on my driveway or going up to the park or driving across the city trying to find the best games. And it's just a different world. And that's just the way the system has changed and evolved over time. And clearly, just as the game itself has changed, the way players go about improving and getting better has changed. And with the advent of high school coaches doing workouts with their players in the summertime, which is, again, something that you and I didn't have access to back when we were playing. We had to kind of create our own workouts and figure out what to do. So when you were working on your game by yourself as a high school player or even as a college player in the summer, how'd you figure out what to do, or what did you put together in terms of a workout to help yourself get better? Where would you go to try to figure out, hey, what kind of drills can I do, or are you just kind of inventing them on the fly?
Yeah, again, I think probably a little from column A and a little from column B. Certainly, you talk to your coaches and say, hey, what are the things that you think, I need to work on, and what are maybe the best ways to go about that? And then, basketball is one of those things you can kind of work on by yourself, and there are a couple things that really never go out of style. You can go and get some shots up, and if you can shoot, you can play. So, I was able to turn myself into a pretty good shooter over the years, and you just kind of go work on it, and nothing like reps, and you try to get a little help here and there to make sure your technique's where it should be, and then just kind of rep it. And so just kind of getting in the gym and working on your ball handling and doing all those things that really still kind of still play, just kind of 2-ball stuff to work on your ball handling, and then getting on the gun, or I remember the old what was it, the bounce back, where it'd go through and it hit the net, exactly. And hit the net and kind of hope it hit just right and it'd bounce back to you, and if not, you kind of chase after it. And,
you could always shoot free throws with that thing at least.
Yeah, it hit and just bounce. Yeah, absolutely, it fall straight through and come back to you. So, but it's like I tell guys, you certainly want to be efficient. You certainly want to use your time well, but a lot of it's just the desire to play and just getting in there and working on it. And if you put in the time and you're getting your shots in, or you're working on your ball handling, and you're in there every day kind of working on it, you'll get better at it. I mean, it just it kind of putting in the hours, kind of putting in the work. And again, I mean, I think you can do it better. There are better ways to do it than others, but I don't think there's any substitute for just, having the motivation to get up, get the ball, get in there, get to the gym, get to the park, and work on your game.
Absolutely. I think there's no doubt. I think sometimes now in today's world, kids can be so overwhelmed with the variety of stuff that's out there that they could do to improve that it almost becomes paralyzing, where you think about, like, when you and I were kids, you didn't have access to all the YouTube videos and the trainers and the this and the that. It was just, hey, I got to go out and work. And like I always tell people, the workout I did the same hour and a half shooting workout probably from the time I was like in 10th grade all the way through playing in college. And that was the workout I did every single day. And I never really varied it. And I probably could have been way more efficient and worked on a lot more variety of skills. But I think what enabled me to have success was just what you just said, is I just wanted to work at it. And I went in there every day and I worked hard at it. And as a result, even though I wasn't super creative with what I was working on, just by putting the time in, it was able to help me and allow me to improve my game and get better. And I think there's a message in there for sure for kids that it's not always what you work on. It's just, hey, are you putting in hard work, and are you going and trying to get the maximum out of whatever ability you were given?
Absolutely. I completely agree with that.
All right. So give me an idea of when you start to see that college basketball may be something that is on your horizon, that you may have an opportunity to do that. And was that something that you always dreamed about, thought about from the time when you first started playing, or was that something that kind of came to you in the midst of your high school career? When did college basketball get on your radar?
I don't remember exactly when. I just know that I liked to play, and that if I could keep playing, I would keep playing. That was sort of kind of how I thought about it. So if somebody wanted me to come and continue to play, I would certainly entertain that offer. I went to a couple of the. I remember I went to a couple of the kind of the old 5-star camps over in Pittsburgh, and I remember when I started getting a lot of attention for basketball. I won the one-on-one tournament at 5-star going into my senior year, maybe it might have been my junior year, and I beat Chris Kingsbury. He's from Cincinnati. He ended up playing at the University of Iowa. Really good player, and I beat him in the final, and that sort of got out. I guess the 5-star, they put that kind of won the one-on-one championship, and so all of a sudden I was getting letters from like everybody, places that I was not good enough to play at. But
right.
So I started sort of. I remember that sort of being a moment where I started getting a lot of attention, and people started calling and talking to me about it, and again, eventually some of those schools figured out that I wasn't quite athletic enough to do maybe what they had thought. Chris was. He was. I got lucky and managed to throw in a couple shots, but he was a really good player and really super athletic, and did very well at Iowa, and so. Yeah, from there I started being recruited, and it began to go in a certain direction where probably because I wanted it to go that way. My parents were both college professors, and I'd been a decent student, and so started kind of focusing on sort of some of the higher end academic schools that were talking to me, and then trying to kind of find the right level. And I ended up being a guy who was probably coming out of high school. I was kind of a 6'6", back to the basket, post player, something you don't see very much anymore. Hit the trail jump shot, but it was really kind of, could go down and kind of get you a bucket down around the basket. And I just wasn't quite big enough to be a Division I player doing that. So I got some Division I interest, but kind of walking on. I remember 3 or 4 schools that called me and said, "Hey, we'd really like you to come walk on." And at that point, I felt like I wanted to choose kind of a place that I liked and was the right academic fit for me. And I wanted to play. I've thought about it as I have, and I tell guys this all the time. You only get 4 years. Decide what you want that 4 years to look like, and then pick something that fits that. And if you want to go try to walk on somewhere, I might be able to help you do that. But understand the chances of you playing much are very, very low. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it doesn't happen very often. And if you're going to be okay with that and you just want to be a part of it and that's what you want to do, that's great. But, if you want to play, then you got to find a place where you can play. So that's kind of how I started thinking about that, I think, into my senior year. And as I began to kind of narrow down what I was thinking about for college.
So as you start thinking about looking at a higher academic school, I'm assuming that you had in the back of your mind at that point, was there a career that you had in mind that you said, hey, if I go to school X or school Y, that's going to give me a leg up on what I eventually wanted to do in my career? Or was it just something where you knew you were a good student, you knew that those academic schools would be ones where you could probably come in and play basketball? Just what was your mindset in terms of going and looking at that particular type of school?
Yeah. So I wish it was more of the first thing you mentioned there. And certainly with my kids, I will encourage them to have more of a plan on what they think they want to do. And I realize it might change, but that kind of wasn't really how I thought about it. I ended up at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, and it was a very good academic school. And I really liked the coach, and they wanted me to come play. And I knew that you could do things there. And I didn't know exactly what I was going to major in. And again, it's a very technical, very mathematical, engineering, computer science school. And I'm pretty good at math, but I wasn't as good at math as those guys. So engineering and those types of things ended up not being for me. So I ended up kind of searching a little bit in college, looking for kind of my major, and did not have a real specific idea of what I wanted to do. But felt like it was the right place for me, and a place where, I could kind of figure it out as I went. And so that's where I ended up. A nice distance for me. I was, Pittsburgh, kind of right down the street, but a couple hours away. It was kind of, felt like the right, the right decision. And I certainly loved my time there, and don't regret for a second having gone there. So, that's kind of how that went.
What was the adjustment like both on and off the court for you when you went for the first time in terms of the basketball? Obviously, the standard answer is everybody's a lot bigger, everybody's a lot faster, but just maybe something unorthodox that people don't often think about when they think about that transition. And then what was the transition like off the court in terms of the social and classroom adjustment?
Yeah, so the first one for me, the biggest difference was I went from being a post player to being a small forward. So it took me a year, and I got to play a fair amount for a freshman, but came off the bench. And I just remember my coach looking at me, and we had two really good post players who were juniors. And he's like, maybe you can beat them out, but I think it would be best if we could get all you guys on the floor together. And that requires you to, kind of go play on the perimeter. I could shoot a little bit, so I had that going for me, but had never really played on the perimeter kind of full time. So that was an adjustment. And the league that we're in at Carnegie Mellon is a really, really competitive Division III league. And so it's really good basketball, really good players. And so, trying to figure that out, kind of playing a new position where I'm facing the basket and standing out on the perimeter and doing all those things while playing in that league was definitely challenging and fun. And, that's kind of what I remember about the big adjustment for me was kind of changing positions. And then socially and dealing with the classwork and all that, it was the same thing. It was fun. I was around a good group of guys. It's challenging. I was at a place that challenged me academically. And so, the work was there, and you had to put in the work on a daily basis, and probably had to, I remember going through a tough semester academically as you sort of begin to realize that everybody there is really smart, and where maybe you could kind of coast through some stuff before that, there wasn't really any coasting through, and you really had to grind some stuff out. So that was a really valuable lesson for me as well. And that was obviously a big adjustment, dealing with that aspect of it as well. And the league had a lot of travel to it. It's kind of a weird Division III league where it was all over the eastern half of the United States. Emory University in Atlanta, Brandeis up at Boston, New York University, University of Chicago. So you're kind of flying to all these places, and you, especially, I just remember, and I coached in the league for a long time. There was usually a back-to-back weekend where you're on the road, and you're out from Thursday morning till Sunday night, and then you're right back out Thursday morning again till Sunday night, and you're gone for quite a while, and just kind of dealing with all that and learning how to kind of grow up and sort of deal with just because we're going on the road, we still had work, and you got to get it done. Like it's not,
right.
It's not just, hey, we're leaving to go to St. Louis and we get to, kick off for 4 days. It didn't really work that way. So,
but you did get to go on some nice trips. One of the things about that league that's pretty incredible is just that all those universities are in big cities, and the opportunity to travel is certainly that is a unique experience from a Division III standpoint. Most Division III schools aren't getting to do the kind of travel that you got to do at Carnegie Mellon that the other schools in the UAA get to do either.
Yeah, correct. No question about it. One of the really cool aspects of the league is, you're getting on a plane for the most part. We bus up to Rochester, or certainly bus over to Case, but getting on a plane and flying to New York City and flying to Atlanta and flying to Chicago and getting to spend a couple of days in those cities every year. And we played a double round robin in the league, so you got to go to every city every year. And again, on top of it, really good teams. You could play the Walsh U. It's a travel partner league, so we play Friday, Sunday. And you try to go play Wash U in Chicago in those, back to back, and good luck with trying to win both those games. I mean, it's a full deal trying to win in that league. So, I mean, it was great. It was the right decision for me. It was the right place for me. It was the right league for me. I've said over and over again, I think I could have played at the Division I level, but I would have been, I could shoot a little bit. I think I would have turned into a 6'6" shooter. That's what I would have been. Like, I would have been kind of a guy, stand on the wing or come off a screen and make a jump shot. And at that level, I ended up being a pretty good player, and you had to learn to kind of do everything. You had to do the heavy lifting. You had to rebound, and you had to score, and you had to, score a variety of different ways. And I ended up being a much, much better player. I'm convinced going that route than I would had I played at a quote unquote higher level.
Absolutely. I'm sure that you use that experience with players that you've had both when you're recruiting them and when you were coaching in college and now as a high school coach, that you can use those experiences to kind of help guide a player's decision-making through the recruiting process. That individual personal story that you can share with players, I'm sure can be impactful with the guys that you've been able to deal with, both, again, as a college coach recruiting them and then as a high school coach trying to help them navigate the recruiting experience.
Yeah, no question. And I've been fortunate to be at a few different levels and have a pretty good feel for it. And, initially with a lot of guys, if they think about Division III, and I say this all the time, they think that you're almost insulting them. And it's like, you don't really get it. I mean, it's really good basketball for sort of normal sized people or kind of
right.
Not that we don't have big guys in Division III.
No, I know what you mean. I know
6'7",
exactly what you mean.
But it's like, if you're a 6'6" post guy and you're a really good player, like Division III is a good place for you. Otherwise, you're gonna, you can try to go be a guy around the basket in Division I, but you're gonna be 4 inches shorter than the guy you're playing against every night, and that won't be that much fun for you. Night after night, usually, unless you're a really unusual guy. So, that's what it is. And so people think that you're saying that, you're not as good as Division I players. And it's like, it's not skill usually. I mean, our guys at the Division III level, a lot of times shot the ball as well as anybody and, could handle and could do all those things. But if you're not lightning quick, it can be challenging to play at the Division I level if you're not lightning quick, because the guy that's guarding you probably is, or the guy you're trying to guard probably is. So it's a place where you can be really successful and play good basketball if you, if you're not 6'10" around the basket, or again, if you're, you have good, and again, to win at that level, you need to really win. And, I've been fortunate to go to a Final Four and we beat Princeton when I was at Carnegie Mellon one year. And I've coached some really good Division III basketball teams. You need, borderline Division I players to win at that level, or guys who were, coming out of high school, were one thing, and then by the time they're juniors or something else, by that time all of a sudden they are kind of they've really kind of figured it out in some way, and they're really, really good players, and now you got a chance. But yeah, it's I tell anybody who wants to knock Division III basketball, go watch a couple games and see it and see how good the players are.
I think that's it's a great point, because it's one of the things that we've talked to a number of Division III coaches on here, and one of the things that a couple of them have brought up to us is when they're sitting down and they're talking to a kid and their family, And sometimes you get that initial reaction like you described where you said, the players feeling like, oh, they're insulting me, saying I can only play Division III. And a couple of the coaches that we've had on have said, well, have you ever, they tell recruits, have you ever even seen a Division III game? Like, have you gone and watched the level of play and seen what you have to be able to do in order to be able to play at the Division III level? And I think that's one of the things that when you look at the current youth basketball / AAU culture, I think there's one of the downsides of it is that there's such a Division I or bust mentality. And I think that's put when you start thinking about Division III, it's such a good level of basketball, and people have no idea how good you have to be able to play college basketball at any level. And everybody only sees the glamour of Division I. And again, you could be at the mid-major or low-major Division I level, and I think it's debatable how much glamour there is.
It's definitely debatable.
That's for sure debatable. And so I think what you have to do, and I hear you saying, is you got to find the right fit for you. And sometimes it's, do you want to be a big fish in a small pond? Do you want to be a small fish in a big pond? Do you want something in between? But you really got to sit down and try to figure it out. And I think that's where somebody like you has a tremendous amount of experience at a bunch of different levels of the game, both as a player and as a coach, to be able to impart that wisdom to a kid and to their family to help them to navigate that. Because a lot of times, you figure as a basketball person, as a basketball coach, you're going through that recruiting process multiple times every year with different players and different levels and all this. But for most people, they go through it one time with one kid. If you're lucky enough to have one kid that gets recruited at any level for any type of sport, that's a lot. And so trying to help people to navigate that, I'm sure, is something valuable that you can bring now as a high school coach through your experience as a college coach.
Sure. And just a couple points that I've mentioned from time to time when, to kind of finish my thought on that.
Sure.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, guys are like, oh, I really want to play Division I, or I really want a scholarship, I really want to be Division II. And I say, that's great. And here are the things I think you should do to try to pursue that. And I think and I would tell a kid that I was recruiting the same thing. I know if you get a Division I scholarship offer, I think you should seriously consider taking that. But how many coaches do you have to convince that you're a Division I player to be a Division I player? How many Division I coaches do you have to convince? And the answer is one, right? How many Division II coaches do you have to convince that you're a Division II player to be a Division II player? And the answer, again, is one. You only have to find one guy who thinks that you're that, who's willing to offer you a scholarship, and you're that. So if you're not getting that, then that's telling you something. That's something that it's not like you have to convince half the Division I coaches in the country that you're a Division I player. You have to convince one. So if that's not happening, then that's sort of telling you something. The other thing I would tell some, I've told a couple kids over the years and they'll be like, I don't know about Division III. It's like, I don't care how good you are. You are not the best guy who's ever played Division III basketball. Like, I literally don't care how good you are. There's been guys who are better than you who have played, Division III basketball who are. So don't get it twisted that you think you're going to just walk out there and maybe you will, maybe you'll be an All-American. That's certainly possible if you're good enough. But, there's been some guys who played in the NBA. There's been some guys who have been Division I guys who have ended up at that level for one reason or another, over the years. So it's, so anyway, yeah, and I do think the point that you've made here a couple times, I think is the key point. Finding what you want to do, or what you want your college experience to look like, and then finding a place that lets you do that. Do you want to go and be the 10th guy on a team for a couple of years? Are you going to be okay with that? Then look for places where that's where you're going to start, and maybe you can move your way up from there. Or do you want to have a chance to play? I want to play a lot as a freshman. Well, then you've got to be good enough to find some place that you can do that. But then finding that place where you can do that is, and kind of thinking about it in those terms. More so than just than thinking, I'll just go anywhere and I'll, of course I'm just going to, start and play 32 minutes game as a freshman wherever I go. And it's like, it's probably not going to happen everywhere. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So you get done with your college career and you get an opportunity to go and play professional basketball, which again, when you think about coming out of Division III, I would bet that if you were to run a random survey during an AAU tournament of parents and kids, can you get an opportunity to play professional basketball coming out of Division III? I'm sure there's a lot of people that say, oh, heck no, there's no way you can do that. So tell us a little bit about how that came to be and what that experience was like.
Yeah, it was. So it was definitely kind of a little bit of an unusual thing. That one was a little different in that I wasn't necessarily thinking about that as my career finished. And I credit my head coach at Carnegie Mellon, Tony Wingen is his name. He's still there. He was the one who sort of approached me and said, I think this would be a possibility for you. I know a couple guys who kind of help place players. And this was during my senior year. And like I guess most, 21-year-old kids at the time who liked to play, and the idea of making a little money to play seemed sound like fun to me. So, it was something that once he mentioned that, I was like, well, I definitely like to see where that would go. It's a little more common now. It's actually not that unusual. The top guys in Division III, most of them probably end up playing professionally at least a little bit for a year or two, if not more. And you see some guys who make careers out of it at the Division III level. At the time, it was not as common. It was probably a little more unusual. And I ended up getting a guy actually in the Canton area who was kind of breaking into placing guys over in Europe, and he was able to get me a gig over in England, and that kind of started it. And I played 3 years in England and Ireland mainly. And as I like to tell people, if they try to get a kind of picture what it is, I say that the further south you go, the more money you make in Europe. And I played as far north as you can play. So so that's what it was. So it was good basketball. The Americans were very good. That was right when they had started where they'd gone to the European Union. And so, for instance, the Irish Basketball League had taken a slight step down from what it had been a few years before, because the very best Irish players could go play in those places for more money. And they didn't have to play as an import player, what we were called. So most teams were allowed two imports. Usually it was Americans, but it didn't have to be. And right before I got there, a couple of years before that, they had changed kind of the rules where a guy from Ireland could play in France or Germany or Spain, essentially as a German or Spanish player would. They didn't count against the limit where before that they had. So if an Irish guy wanted to go try to play in Spain, he had to be better than, the Americans and things like that wanted to play in Spain. So it was less common. So what it did do was take the top handful of guys out of the league. And so again, still really good basketball, but the very top Irish guys didn't play in the Irish Super League anymore. They were playing in Belgium or again, Germany or France or wherever they ended up. But still really fun. I wouldn't trade it for anything. 3 years, met a lot of great people, got a chance to travel around and see a lot of places. Got a chance to live and, have kind of an overseas experience, which I really enjoyed and really tried to take advantage of. And so, if you can get somebody to pay you a little bit of money to play basketball for a few years, I would recommend it.
Absolutely.
So it was good crack, as the Irish would say. Really enjoyed my experience doing that. So played 3 years professionally, and then got into coaching after that.
What's your funniest story from your time over there?
Oh, I don't even know what kind of show is this? Can I? I won't name names.
Let's call it PG-13.
I won't. Okay, yeah, this probably is PG-13. So I won't name names, but my teammate I was playing for the Dublin Bay Vikings in Dublin Bay, in the Dublin Bay area of Ireland, and we were playing. Who did they play for? Limerick or somebody in the interior of the country. Tralee, one of those teams over there. And the guy who I played with, who went to Fordham University, that's all I'll say about him. A really good guy, but and I think it's probably known, and I don't know if it's as much anymore, but back then, I think even in the NBA, the incidence, the usage of marijuana, I think was probably pretty high. And so fortunately, it was never my thing, but my teammate enjoyed it every now and then. And so he was hurt. And couldn't play that day. So we were actually going to have to play shorthanded with only one American, and we were getting ready to play them. And the night before, he drove over to see his friends who played on the other team. He knew the guys pretty well, and they hit it pretty hard. Like, I think pretty much like that night and all day the next day. And when they showed up, you could just, they had the glassy look in their eyes and everything. And we ended up pounding them pretty good, as he incapacitated them a bit.
There you go. Infiltrated the enemy. I like it.
And got them off their game. Got them off their game just a little bit, and we ended up
off the court.
And off the court, really,
That's
the MVP of the game, man of the match, as they would say over there. With
that's
so
awesome.
That was from a playing standpoint. I mean, we obviously, we're playing basketball, and we were on TV a fair amount. So it's just a kind of a fun time, and you're working nights and weekends, and just kind of, I took it very seriously and was professional about it, but certainly had a really good time, and playing especially when I played in Ireland. I'm sorry. We were in Dublin, and probably about almost half the league was based in Dublin. So there'd be, one team in Sligo and one team over in Waterford and one team, and then there were like 5 or 6 teams in the Dublin area. So you got to know those guys pretty well, and we had a good time, good games. I mean, we played hard, played to win, but got to know those guys off the court and really had a good time. The other kind of funny story that people get a little bit of a kick out of, so the first league I played in was in England, and I'm getting ready to go. They're processing my work permit and the whole 9 yards. And literally like 2 days before I was supposed to leave, Princess Diana had her accident and passed away. And the entire country shut down. And so I was sitting there on standby, like in my house. I moved back in with my parents for about a month, getting ready to go. And just sitting by the phone, just waiting for them to call me and say, okay, they went back to work and they've processed your work permit and you can get on the plane now and come over. And just sitting there for, it was literally like 2 weeks. I missed the first game. Like it was just because they didn't process my work permit. So I wasn't going to be allowed to stay in the country, until that happened. And so that was another kind of quirky thing that happened to me in my travails.
There's always good stories. That is the best. I think that's my favorite segment. I always say we would put together a podcast of just guys' favorite overseas basketball stories, because you could run the gamut, especially if you could step it up and have it be R-rated and beyond. You could probably get an even funnier podcast, I'm sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, no doubt. There was some hijinks from time to time. No doubt about that.
Hey, hoopheads, we all hate ankle sprains, and they happen way too often. Ankle injuries are the #1 sports-related injury. Arise is trying to change that. With the iFast, your athletes get preventative protection and full mobility. Athletes no longer need to wear bulky braces that limit performance and give mediocre protection. Anyone playing sports should be using these products. Keep your athletes in the game. Don't wait for them to get hurt to take action. Visit www.arise.com, spelled ARYSE, and use the code HOOPHEADS to get 20% off the future of performance. That's ARYSE.com with promo code HOOPHEADS to get 20% off. Do you want to score more? Training with the Shoticle is the easiest way to score more. The game is changing, and data scientists are determining the best ways to score. Millions of computer simulations determine where to hit the backboard for the highest percentage shots and when it's best to use the backboard. The Shoticle provides those highest percentage shots. From beginners to next-level athletes, the Shoticle is helping players increase their shooting percentages. Visit Shoticle.com now and start scoring more. As you're going through and you're playing at Carnegie Mellon, you get these opportunities to go and play professionally. Is coaching something that is on your radar that you're starting to think about as being a career, or is it something that kind of comes to you at the last minute as your playing career is coming to an end, that you're like, hey, I got to stay in this game somehow. Maybe coaching's where I should be. So in other words, was it more of a long-term plan, or was it something that you just kind of looked around when you were done and said, hey, I better start coaching?
Yeah, neither. I literally hadn't given coaching a second's worth of thought. I had to have ankle surgery and felt that it was time to get into a career of something. So I had some offers to go back. But like I said, and again, it was a good living. I probably had as much money in my pocket when I was done as my friends who had started off in a career, but eventually it was going to come to an end. I'd come to the realization I probably wasn't going to make $1 million in Spain. Like I just wasn't quite good enough for that. So it was like I could continue to play a couple more years doing this, or at some point I'm probably going to have to get, at this point I'm getting close to 25. I'm going to have to, think about doing something. So I kind of decided at that point I was going to stop playing and really needed a job, and was, talking to a couple coaches that I knew, just not even really about that. And they were like, the guy down in Marietta needs a graduate assistant this year. If you're not, if you're kind of looking around for something to do right now, you could go do that for a year, kind of get some graduate school, and then kind of figure out what you want to do. And I talked to Doug Foote, was his name, was coach at Marietta College at the time. And he's like, yeah, you're it. Come down and you can help me. You can help me for the year, and we'll kind of, figure it from there. And so that's really how I got into coaching. Like the thing I knew best at that point was probably, how to play basketball. And so, I guess it sort of made sense that would be kind of the job that would find me. I mean, it was kind of the job that found me more than me finding the job. And so I went down there and helped Doug Foote at Marietta College for a year, and that kind of got the ball rolling. And now I kind of couldn't imagine doing anything else. But yeah, very much last minute, very much, kind of was looking to start something, and wasn't necessarily finding the jobs that I wanted. And that sort of came up. And so I was like, well, okay, let me go do that. And I'll take some grad courses and kind of figure out what I want to do. And here I am.
Did you have any idea kind of what coaching was all about? I mean, obviously you play on a team for a long time, and you've gone through high school, you've gone through college, you've gone through the professional ranks, but did you really have any idea kind of what it meant to be a coach, especially at the college level? Did you feel like you had a good handle on that, or no?
No, yeah, not even a little bit when I started. And I tell people now, because it's a funny job, right? It's a job where everybody in the world thinks they'd be really good at it. So it's everybody who doesn't do it is like convinced that they would be like a really good basketball coach. And the thing that most people don't understand, and I certainly didn't understand, is that like X's and O's is like the fifth most important thing you do. It's just, there's so much that goes into being an effective basketball coach, and having an effective basketball team, and helping kids get the most out of that experience, and hopefully helping them develop, kind of into the people they want to be. And, all I knew was I knew a little bit about shooting, and I could, run a flex offense and show somebody else how to run a flex offense if they needed to. But then you very quickly begin to realize that that's really, really not, it's almost a small part of it. Like that's not really what coaching is about most of the time. So, so no, I was, I was not a very good assistant. I'm sure I thought I was, but I'm sure if we had Coach Foote on right now, he'd probably tell you that, and he worked with young guys. He had graduate assistants. That's kind of how it was. Married at the time. Now everybody has a full-time assistant, or most of the higher end Division III teams do. But at the time, a lot of them didn't, and so this is what you had. And so he would kind of break new coaches in, and was a really good coach, and a really good guy to be around for that year. But no, definitely learned a ton. But he helped me certainly. My guess is a whole lot more than I helped him.
What's one or two things that maybe you felt like you were pretty decent at right from the get-go, and then what's one or two things that you feel like when you look back at that beginning time that you're like, oh, I was terrible at that?
I think almost two sides of the same coin, funnily enough. I think that I've always been, if somebody asks me what I do pretty well as a kind of the basketball component of it, I feel like I played long enough that I have a pretty good idea of how to play and do some things maybe that most people don't necessarily teach a player. As far as, when a guy gets the ball here, try to think about this. This is the way to be effective stopping him, or stop most guys. And here's kind of how you want to do that. And I've always been, I think, pretty good at making that make sense to guys, so I could kind of help teach them kind of some of the intricacies of it. That maybe a step beyond kind of being in just proper defensive position or something like that, which most good coaches can teach. But kind of get into, okay, here's, think about what he's going to try to do, and here's how we can kind of combat that and make it, kind of a low percentage proposition for him. to start with, I wasn't an effective practice coach. I mean, I didn't really know, other than talking to guys on the side a little bit and say, hey, I saw what you just did there. Maybe think about this. But having an idea of kind of day to day what coach was trying to get done was something I had to learn and wasn't great at. I don't think I was as coaches, obviously you make your money in practice, and that was not something I was great at for the first year or two, I don't think. Actually, as I recall, when I first started, I don't even think I liked being coaching in practice. Like I was like, when are the games? When do those
start playing some games,
let's
right?
Start playing some games. Now, and it's funny, even as an assistant, even as I got better at being an assistant, I think I got to the point where I'd like to believe I was a very good assistant. You're always ready for the games to be in, and as a head coach, I always wish I had one more practice. Before we play the next game. It's
amazing what having that game on your record does to you, right?
Yeah. I'm like, man, if we just have 2 more days to get ready for this, I think we'd be pretty good. But it's funny how that shifts for you.
It does, absolutely. Big change. All right, so you get done with that first experience at Marietta, and then you get an opportunity to go back to your alma mater, correct?
Correct. Yep.
All right, so talk to us about how that came to pass, and then what the experience was like to go back to a place where you had played and become part of that staff and kind of go behind the curtain on, what previously you had only been able to see from the playing side of it.
Yeah, it was so Tony Wingen, like I said, my coach needed a guy, and now I was kind of in coaching, and so obviously I'd known him for at this point almost 10 years, and so he asked if I wanted to come back, and I did, and I really liked Carnegie Mellon, and I really liked Pittsburgh, so it seemed like a good, and I can't stress this enough. I really enjoyed my time in Marietta. It's a cool little town. It wasn't like I was dying to get out of Marietta, but just a chance to go back. And again, I learned a ton from Doug Foote. I learned as much from him as anybody that first year. So I really enjoyed my time in Marietta. We had a great year. Marietta is now really, really good. At the time, they weren't, we had kind of one of the best years that Marietta had in a long, long time. We had some really good players, and it was a really fun year. But, again, just the opportunity to go back to a place that I knew and to work with a coach that I really liked was kind of a really good opportunity and something that I wanted to do. And one of the cool things I would say to people too is being a Division III assistant is a really cool thing because you get to do everything right away. We don't have, now you go to, I was at Akron for a couple of years and it's great. I mean, it's great to be around that many guys who love basketball. But we have a lot of people on staff, and you can go a long time in Division I or even Division II and not really get to coach and not really get to recruit, not really get to, the assistants and the head coach get to do that. But, most of the others, there are all sorts of rules in place about what you are and aren't allowed to do if you're everybody else. And, in Division III, you're 25 years old and right off the bat, it's like, okay, we got to go recruit this kid, like go get him. And kind of learning on the job on all that. And you're doing all the scouting. I mean, I've written more scouting reports probably than anybody in the country, I feel like, because you're writing, as an assistant, I'm writing almost all of them in some of my stops. So, I mean, you're really involved in the everyday decision making. And so that was a really fun part about going back to Carnegie Mellon. It was a guy that I knew, we sat down right away and talked about what it is we wanted to try to accomplish. And we set to work on that, and we were, and we did it. We got it done. Carnegie Mellon never won the UAA. It's a really hard league to win. And 5 years after I got there, and we won more games every single year. And in the 5th year, we won the league for the first time and got to go to the NCAA tournament, and just how sort of awesome it was to sort of go through that. Really good kids, really hard workers, and just, getting to work with Tony every day and getting to do that was still one of the highlights of my career, is just kind of helping Carnegie Mellon get as good as we got. And that was at the time when I was coaching at Carnegie Mellon as the assistant, that we beat Princeton one year. We were actually beating Pitt one year at halftime. We actually were beating Pitt at halftime by 2, came out and hit the first 2 threes of the second half. And Jamie Dixon's over there calling timeout. We're up on Pitt. This is like number 5 in the country, Pitt. It's an exhibition game, but and we're up 8 with about 18 minutes left. And from there, they played a little better, and we're able to sneak it out on us. But really good teams, really good players. And like I talked about in Division III, really good players, and and we got good, and so again, getting to go back and be a part of that, day to day in the office, thinking about how we wanted to accomplish what we wanted to accomplish, getting the players that we got, helping develop them and turn into a really good team. and getting to do it with somebody you like as much and respect as much as I like and respect Tony was just a great time, a great, kind of a time that I really look back on fondly.
Was there an adjustment period? Obviously, he was your coach, so there's a different relationship there when you have the player-coach dynamic versus you come back and are a part of his staff. So how long did it take you to kind of get over the fact that this guy used to be a, quote, authority figure in your life or somebody that was on a different level from you, and now you're more on equal footing with him when you come back and you're part of his staff? How quickly were you able to kind of get past that and settle into what you needed to do to help him do what he needed to do?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, he and I always had a good relationship. I don't recall it taking us too long to get into kind of a pretty good rhythm. And we felt the same way about things when it came to basketball. Like we were compatible in that way. So like, kind of what he thought we should do and what I thought we should do. And when I first got there, it's not like I was sitting there telling him, hey, we should do this. Like, I was there more to help him do what he wanted to do. But it was easy for me to help him do what he wanted to do because I agreed with everything we were sort of doing. And so, I feel like we were pretty in sync, pretty quickly. And again, we're able to I think, come up with a good vision, be able to share that vision with kind of the kids that we needed to recruit to be able to win. And we're able to get those types of players, and you have to have really good players to be able to compete at the highest level of like we were able to in Division III basketball. And so, that's the long-winded answer to your question. And not very long. I feel like we were, pretty quick to get on the same page as to kind of what we wanted to do, how we wanted to do it, that kind of thing.
What's the biggest thing that you remember that you took away from that experience with Tony at Carnegie Mellon that you still carry with you in your coaching today?
Yeah, I think that he's a really good communicator, and he's really good at getting guys to, coaching the whole person. And he's a guy who made you feel like he cared about you. And again, I tell people all the time, like, hopefully playing basketball is fun and being good is fun. And there are certain things you have to do sometimes to work at it, especially on a team. Most people don't love working on closeouts for 10 minutes, but it's a really important aspect of it. And he was really good at getting you to kind of buy into those types of things and realize the value and kind of everything that you're doing out there to help the team become what it could become. And so I try very hard to think of kind of how he would handle some of the situations that come up sometimes, and try to emulate what I think he would do. And again, I think he was kind of a master at it. And so I'd say that's the thing that I've most taken with him, among other things, but that's the thing I've most taken with me, since I, kind of left Carnegie Mellon.
Plus, he also had an impact on you, not only as a coach, but as a player too, which I'm sure has imprinted itself on you as a coach. I think there's no doubt that as players, coaches who are former players, certainly I think take a lot from not just the coaches that they've coached with, but I think from the coaches that they played for, both on a positive and negative way. And a lot of times you might, as a player, think, well, boy, if I ever am a coach, I would never do that, in the same way. But I think that a lot of times the coaches that we play for also have an impact on the kind of coaches that we become, and the things that we learn, and the things that we eventually incorporate into our coaching style. So eventually you get your next opportunity at MIT, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Talk a little bit about that transition, how that comes to pass, why you decide to leave your alma mater, and what was unique about that opportunity at MIT.
Yeah. So I was at Carnegie Mellon for 8 years, and like I say, we got good. The last 4, we were very good. And after 8 years, I wasn't quite getting the head coaching looks that I wanted. And in 8 years, and I'd been with Tony for 4 as a player, and I think it just was, it was just a good time for us to, for him to get somebody new in there with him, and for me to go work with somebody else and do something else. And so I'd gotten to know Larry Anderson a little bit over the years, kind of recruiting in similar circles. And he needed a guy, and we talked, and I talked to Tony about it, and it just seemed like it was the right, just kind of the right time to do something, different, to branch out a little bit. You're really comfortable at Carnegie Mellon, but to do something, something like that. And And again, obviously I was in athletics at MIT, but it's still kind of, it's MIT. You're like MIT, right? I mean,
right.
Okay,
You don't have to say much more than that.
Let's go, right? Let's go do it. And so, went up and started helping Larry out. And, again, I had just been so blessed and so fortunate to just be around such great coaches and great guys. And again, same thing. We just worked well together, and he's just a really good guy. He's a funny story. He's been, I'm trying to think I just talked to him the other day. He's in 32nd or 33rd year at MIT. He got the job really young. He was the youngest alderman in the history of the state of Mississippi. And he was at Rust College, and they hired him out of Rust College, an assistant at Rust College in Holly Springs, Mississippi. And they hired him to MIT when he was probably 28 or 29 maybe. And he's been there ever since. And just, maybe something that wouldn't look like the perfect fit for MIT, but he's the perfect fit for MIT. And getting to spend 4 years with him, I again just learned so much and was really blessed. We had kind of a really fun first year, and then was able to parlay that into some really good players. And my last year there, we were really, really good. And it's just a unique place, and it just was a really fun experience.
So when you eventually, in your next job, you get your first head coaching opportunity at Ohio Northern. So you think back to all of your time as an assistant, and now you get the job at Ohio Northern, and you got to put together your staff. You got to get somebody on that is going to help you. So when you look for somebody to hire, what qualities were you looking for in somebody that was going to join your staff based upon the things that you felt you had learned over the course of your your time as an assistant coach? How did that help you in hiring a staff when you eventually got a head coaching job?
Yeah, so it was a little bit of an unusual deal. So when I got hired at Ohio Northern, and I got hired late in the summer, I got hired in the summer. The previous coach, John Rhodes, had left to go to Duquesne as an assistant with Jim Ferry. And it took him a little while to fill the spot. And so I didn't get the job until I believe it was into June of that year, and actually inherited the assistant coach who had interviewed for the job and was an alum of the school and didn't end up getting it. And he and I got along very well. I liked him a lot. And so I was cool with it. Was kind of part of the deal was that I would keep him on.
Understood.
And I was fine with that. Like I wasn't trying to unemploy the assistant. So we were together for a few months, and then as it turned out, I think he's probably a little bit, I think he was kind of looking to get out once he didn't get the head coaching job. And so in September he took another job. Actually, not in basketball. He got out to go into sales, and so I was, we were getting close to the start of the year. And there was so the guy I ended up hiring as my full-time assistant was a guy who was around, who had been a successful high school coach in the Cincinnati area. And I hired him for a couple reasons. One, I didn't have much head coaching, some JV games in Carnegie Mellon, things like that, where you don't really play a ton of JV games, a handful here or there. Right. It was really my only head coaching experience. And I coached like the county team in England to make a little extra money. The Northampton team, 10 years before that, when I was playing over in England, were really kind of my only head coaching experience. And so he had head coaching experience, and he knew Cincinnati, and it is in kind of a weird place in that if you drive there from here, it looks like it's in the middle of nowhere. It's just, you see every bit of agricultural Ohio, driving from Northeast Ohio to Ada. Now, coming from the west, it's kind of not that far from 75. It's not that far from Lima. So it has a little less of that feel to it. But it's like 2 hours from everywhere in the state of Ohio, except for the southeast corner, and there's nothing really in the southeast corner. So I knew kind of Northeast Ohio pretty well, and was going to be, living in Northwest Ohio, but Cincinnati was, and Dayton were not areas that I was super familiar with, and he was from those areas. He coached in the Cincinnati area for years. And so it seemed like a good fit as far as what we were going to try to do, recruiting and that kind of thing. So that was kind of the way that I thought about it, trying to find somebody who complemented what I did, and maybe brought something to the table that I didn't necessarily have at the time.
What was the biggest revelation for you when you got the head coaching job compared to what it was like being an assistant?
Well, obviously, that one step over to the big chair is a big step. I mean, you go from being the suggester to the decision maker. I mean, it kind of comes down to what you want to do, and there's no hiding it behind wow, I thought we should do this and we didn't do it, or whatever you tell yourself as an assistant when things don't work out. But right then the buck stops there. I mean, it's on you to kind of get it going, and it was a kind of a weird time for Ohio Northern basketball. I mean, the team had, over the years, been really successful, and they were in kind of a little bit of a lull when I got there, and so we were trying to fix a couple things that had kind of maybe kind of corroded a little bit over the previous 5 or 6 years, and so it was a full deal. It was a challenging situation, given that really passionate alumni group for a Division III school, and guys that had won national championships and that kind of thing, and felt very strongly. And it was a little bit of a tough deal too, in that they passed over another alum for the job as well. So that didn't sit too well with some people, and so you were dealing with a little bit of that as a first-time head coach as well. So just kind of managing all of that, just kind of negotiating your way through all of that. I think as the assistant, you kind of you talk to the head coach about things that he's going through and that kind of thing, but you're not really the one going through it in some ways. And now you are, you're the one that's trying to keep the alumni, on board and all those types of things. And on top of it being your first head coaching job. So it was, it was eye opening. I mean, it was definitely a challenge.
So how do you rise up and meet that challenge? Do you reach back out to people that you worked with before to pick their brain? Do you go back and refer to a notebook, a journal, a computer file of things that you've put together that you've sort of collected to prepare yourself for being a head coach? What did you fall back on when times got tough to help you to be able to build the type of program that you wanted to build there?
Yeah, I think probably a little bit of all of that. Ohio Northern had a nice niche, has an engineering school. I joke, I coach engineers. That's kind of what I've done over my over my life. So that was a nice thing to have. So we had it's definitely a school you could sell, and we're just trying to bring in the best players and best students that we could. It was kind of the way I thought about it. As far as what we did on the court, I actually, when I was at MIT, we played in the first round of the year we went to the Final Four. My last year at MIT, we played a team in the first round of the tournament, Skidmore College from Schenectady, New York, maybe, or Poughkeepsie, one of those towns over in New York, and they did a really unusual kind of high post offense, and I actually ended up stealing a lot of that. We didn't have any size my first couple of years at MIT or at Ohio Northern, I'm sorry, and so couldn't really post or any of those types of things. But we had some bigs who could put it on the deck a little bit and tried to take advantage of all that, and actually did pretty well with it. We were probably a little better than people thought we were going to be the first couple of years there, and so that was kind of just trying to find something that fit the talent the best we could as far as playing wise, and then just trying to get back to competing every night, and then working on trying to help the guys that we inherited have a good experience, and also start bringing in some good players that could compete at the highest end of the OAC.
All right, so two things there related to, let's talk the recruiting piece of it first. How do you go about identifying and finding guys that you think are going to fit your program? And what are some things that, obviously there's a certain level of talent that you have to have in order to be able to play at that level, but what are maybe some things that were more intangible that you specifically look for, or questions that you wanted to ask about the players that you were trying to bring in?
I think as far as the type of kid that you're looking for, and this is kind of a guideline much more than a rule, but I've always found the guys that work hard in the classroom and work hard in general tend to be our best players. So that piece was always important to me, finding guys who were good students, who were, and again, it doesn't mean you had to be a straight A student to play. I don't want to make it sound like it was something like that, but looking for guys who were kind of grinders, who were willing to kind of punch the clock every day, and put in the work in the classroom, put in the work. Guys that you could kind of see evidence of that, and their coaches would kind of speak to that type of thing. And again, obviously you're looking for talent as well, but In Division III, we don't have athletic scholarships, so you can, you don't have to be quite as fine as you do at the scholarship level as far as making a determination as to whether or not, if the kid if High Northern felt like the right place to him and he seemed like a good fit, and, you didn't necessarily have to say, okay, well, I'm not quite sure he's good enough. And so, we could carry an extra guy or two. The school liked us to carry an extra guy or two for, enrollment's always an issue, especially these days at some of these schools. So, looking for the kid that kind of fit in with that kind of general mold. And then, obviously looking for guys who just, and as far as identifying them, you'd scout any way you could. You'd end up at showcases, and I'd end up at, shootouts. I'd call my buddies, and they were having a shootout that day. I called Guy Neal over at Bluff. Then you have a shootout. Do you mind if I come over and just take a look? And they were, and people could always come over to ours too. And the guy was always welcome. So, I've always been, not every kid's for you. And I wanted kids to have a lot of, I wasn't trying to hide people. Like, oh, I'm recruiting, nobody else is. Maybe I can sneak this guy through when nobody's looking. I wanted kids to have an opportunity to see different places. So I think people knew that about me. So they're pretty open to those types of things. And, just try to turn every leaf over that you could to find what you're looking for.
All right. So once you have kids in the fold and you bring them into your program, and obviously as a brand new coach, you have to build the type of culture that you want to have in your program. So how did you go about building the type of culture that you wanted to have? Is that something that you had a formal plan for? Was that something where it was more done day by day, just through personal individual conversations with players, staff, administration? How did you go about trying to put in place the things that you believed in terms of the culture that you wanted to have for your program?
I would say it was more of a day-to-day thing, and just kind of trying to do it every day. Is kind of how we would talk to the kids about it, and that was all aspects of it. That was certainly the classroom was a big piece of that, and then working so that everything became kind of a habit forming thing. Like, you work hard every day in the classroom, you come in, and we work hard in basketball. So we have a good day of practice, and we try to stack good days, and then the game is just a continuation of that type of thing. And so that's why you were looking for that type of kid, so that if somebody was falling off and you'd see their grades struggling, okay, something's not quite right here with what it is that we're trying to get him to think about doing. So we kind of sit down and talk about it, and we had a kind of formal academic plan in place, and try to carry it through all aspects of what we were doing every day. And I think we were fairly successful with that, and we're able to build a pretty solid program in my time there. But it was more that. It was more just kind of showing up every day. How are you doing in the classroom? Checking on all that. How are you looking in practice today? You're out there working, you're out there, performance level may, ebb and flow a little bit, but you're out there every day doing the things we need you to do. And eventually it kind of becomes the habit that everybody expects. And then your older guys can help the younger guys sort of get it. You don't have to, at first you probably have to drive it a little more. But then hopefully at some point you can begin to pass some of that off to your players, and they can kind of show the younger guys kind of how we think about doing things.
What does it look like in terms of style of play on both ends of the floor? How much of it is you go into your season with a philosophy that you believe in, and then how much do you take that philosophy and adjust it based on the personnel? Obviously in college compared to in high school, you have a lot more control over the types of players that you bring in that can kind of fit the system and the style of play that you want to have. Whereas on the high school level, it's more you get kind of what you get. But just talk a little bit about how you adjust your style of play on both ends of the floor to what your personnel is capable of doing.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's more tweaks. And even at the Division III level, you'd be surprised. I mean, if you get a really good player and he doesn't exactly fit your system, like you find a way to make him fit your system.
Right,
it's not,
yep.
We're not Kentucky where we can be like, oh, that kid's really, really good, but he's not quite what we're looking. We'll take this other really, really good kid. There aren't that many of them, so you got to kind of take what you can get. I definitely have some ways that I think are the ways that my teams tend to play, and then you kind of tweak it a little bit to fit your talent. Like I say, the one year we played with I'm not sure we threw the ball in the low post one time the entire year. And I like to throw the ball in the low post, even if it's not to score, but I just think getting the ball, down there. It's a different guarding place for when most guys are working on defense. It's kind of the ball's on the perimeter and you're in the gap or you're on the line, on the line, up the line, whatever it is you're doing. But you get that ball behind people and their heads start turning and you can. So I like to throw the ball in the post, and that year I don't think we threw the ball in the post once. So again, you tweak it that way, but I think we always try to get the ball up the floor pretty quickly. The only time I wouldn't do that is if we just couldn't do it, like without turning the ball over. I just think even if you're not very good offensively, like we'll get down there and maybe we can steal a basket or two if we do those things, and try to find a few advantage possessions in the game where we can get something easy maybe. And the only way you can really do that is to be consistently trying to get down there to see if that's there, and then obviously we can play from there. So that stuff rarely changes. The way I think about defense has changed over the years. Probably like most coaches, I do things a little differently now than I used to, as things have evolved and found something that we like. But I press the same way I've always pressed. And if I have a team that can press, then we press a little more. If we have a team that can't press, then we press a little less. We play more zone probably than most people. I have a zone that I like that works pretty well for us. So, but those things, I put that stuff in every year, and then just depending on the team, some years we might play 90% man, and some years we might play 50% man, and the personnel has a lot to do with that. But what we do doesn't really change a whole lot, from year to year. Again, maybe sometime there's a tweak or a new kind of idea defensively that you've talked through with somebody that you might change. But in general, we start pretty much the same way every year, and then kind of tweak it as we go.
Understood. All right, your next opportunity after Ohio Northern is at the University of Akron at the Division I level. So you're going through a little change there from the Division III to the Division I level. Talk to us a little bit about that transition, what it was like, and then maybe just describe your experiences at Akron.
Yeah, no, and again, different. It's a different deal, right? I mean, the Division I college level is a different animal. Like I say, the first thing is there's 10 of you in the office every day. I mean, it's a different. Where in Division III, there's 2 or 3 of you doing all of it. And now there's just more people, and which is a really cool thing. I mean, really good coaches, fun guys to be around, and then my 2 years at Akron were unusual and fun in that I was there for the transition from Keith Dambrot to John Gross, so I got a chance to work with both of them, and if ever there's a way that you can see that there's 2 different ways to do it. I mean, they are 2 different coaches. They do things differently, yet they're both very successful. They both do really, really well. And so for me, just getting to see that, to get to work with 2 guys of that caliber, and being there with them every day and working at it was really fun. In my first year there with Coach Dambrot, that we had a really good team. We set the school record for wins, and Akron had been good for years. Unfortunately, we got beat out in the conference championship game, but ended up another funny story. We ended up in Texas for about a week after that because we had to play Houston in the first round of the NIT and beat them, and then we thought we were going to have to go play BYU, but they lost to UT Arlington, so we had to play UT Arlington the next round. And the way the timing worked, we weren't going to be able to like the game was like an hour down the road, and we were going to have to fly all the way back to Akron. There was no direct flight, and it was going to be like this whole thing. So we ended up just staying out there for like 4 or 5 days after we lost to Kent in the MAC Conference Championship. And then the next year, as happens with coaching changes in the Division I level, a lot of players, a couple transferred to Duquesne, and some other guys decided to go do something else. And so, John came in and had to put a team together on the fly, and we weren't as good. But again, just watching him work every day, I think we got the most out of that team, even though it was not nearly as talented as the team that we coached the year before. But again, just being around guys who I just really like and respect both of them so much, and just getting a chance to be around them and see a different way about how they think about things and how they go about things, and was just an incredible experience and a lot of fun another, again, just really fortunate. Like I say, it's a recurring theme in my life is how fortunate I've been to kind of work with some of the people I've worked with.
So everything that you've done over the course of your career kind of comes full circle, and you end up back at your alma mater, your own high school where you graduated, Walsh Jesuit here in Ohio. Talk a little bit about how that opportunity comes to pass, why you decided to jump from the college level where you had been since the very beginning of your career to the high school level, and then what you've enjoyed about it. What's been the positives of making that change?
Yeah. So I really hadn't thought about getting into high school. I really like coaching college and really like being in college, but my wife had gotten a really good job in the Solon area, and the job opened up. And again, there had been no indication that it would. The previous coach, John Norris, had been the coach for had gotten the job when he was in his 20s, and had been the coach. I think he was there the head coach for 13 years, and he's still at the school. He still teaches in the social studies department at Walsh. So I see him, talk to him today for 20 minutes. But it was one of those things. Walsh, in the almost 50 years of existence, had only had really two, or there had been one or two guys right at the very beginning, and then Frank Lepica was there forever, and then John took over for Frank. I mean, they'd had two coaches in the last 40 years pretty much, and there was no reason to believe that John wasn't going to do it for another 20 or 25 years. And just had he and his wife had a little girl, and she'd had a couple of health issues, and she's doing great now. But I know he's having to drive back and forth to Cincinnati a fair amount, and just decided he needed to spend more time with his family. And so out of the blue, nobody knew he was even thinking about it. He just decided it was time to step away. And so the job came open, and because it was Walsh, and I had such a great experience playing there and going to school there, it was kind of like, well, let me see if they'd have any interest in me coaching the team. And it turned out they did. And so it just kind of worked out that with where my family was at the time, and my wife having having gotten being in a settled position, it just seemed like the right move at the right time for me. It was just kind of the right thing to do, even though I hadn't really thought about doing it before. And so that's kind of how that worked out. I ended up getting the alumni director's job at the school as well, which I've really enjoyed, and it goes hand in hand with some of the stuff I've done. And as a Division III coach, you certainly do a lot of kind of alumni engagement and some low level fundraising, and so I had some experience with those types of things, and so that job really fit me well, and I really enjoyed it. I didn't know how it would be. But I don't really do things that much differently. Maybe here and there, you kind of tweak it a little bit, maybe simplify it just a bit. But like I say, beating St. V's is as hard as anything you're going to do in coaching, right? I mean, it's not like this isn't full of challenges. Playing Medina in the district championship last year is, it's a full deal coaching wise, and playing Shaker Heights and the teams we played, and went down and played St. Xavier and I have Moeller in my mind, but not Moeller, Elder, the other one. Going down and playing these teams is legit challenging, and so it's I certainly don't care any less. You try just as hard. It's just as exciting when things go well. It's just as disappointing when things don't go well. So I've really enjoyed it. It's been a lot of fun, and got a chance to work with. Been really fortunate. My first two teams. The line I use on my teams the last 2 years, I mean, it is, everybody tries to do what we're trying to do. Like some nights we do it better than others, but everybody's out there, kind of pulling on the rope in the same direction at the same time. And that's a really fun way to coach. And so like I say, I wouldn't, it's been great. I've really enjoyed it.
What's something that's been different about coaching high school compared to college that you've really enjoyed? Something that is not something that maybe you experienced in college, or maybe it's just something about the age of the kids or the impact that you can have. Just think about maybe one thing that is different that you really have enjoyed about the high school.
Yeah, I think that you sort of hit on it. It is a different, experience. You have some sophomores on your team, they're 15 years old. The youngest guys I'd ever coached before that were, 18 or 19 years old. And it's a different time of your life at that age. And so I think working with the kids, you get them at a more formative time. And it's not to say that the college kids I've had, almost all of them, almost to a person, I've really enjoyed coaching too. So I don't want to make it sound like you get them when they're a little older but there is a little more of, and maybe it's been some of the places that I've coached too, at a place like MIT, sometimes those guys kind of want to know why, like you're doing kind of what you're doing. Like there's a little bit more, they don't mean it to be disrespectful. It's just the way they are, they just,
that's the way that's the way their brain works, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A little more, Carnegie Mellon's the same way, and maybe a little more explanation necessary. Where at this level, you can kind of be like, hey, I'm not, and I try very hard not to be the guy who's like, hey, just because I told you so. But they don't really question it as much. You say, hey, this will work. I think you do this, and you kind of get the kind of the nod of the head, and they go out there and they try their very best to do it. And so I think, that aspect of it has been an enjoyable one. And, and having grown up in Ohio, getting to play in the OHSAA tournament and, getting to compete for district championships and all that's really fun. I mean, it's a really fun thing to do. And I think it's fun for the players and it's fun for me. I really enjoy doing it. So it's, getting to be a part of that has been, because it's the UAA is the one league, I think it's the only league in the country now that doesn't have a conference tournament. So, now the OAC did, and it's not like I never participated in a conference tournament. We made the NCAA tournament from time to time. And like I say, made a Final Four run before, but I've had a lot of years where there was nothing like that at the end, where it's, you play and, you finish, hopefully you have a good year, but if you're not, the best team in the league or the second best team in the league, your season ends right there. And so to be able to kind of keep building, I think it's been a strength of mine as a coach that we really try to get better. If there's 3 days left in the season, we're trying to get better. We're going to find the thing that we don't do as well as we need to, and we're going to work on it. And we're going to try to get better. And when you have that carrot at the end there to really try to let that manifest itself in a way to try to win some exciting games and to pull an upset or something like that in the tournament, it's really been a fun experience.
Yeah, to have that tournament carrot waiting at the end for you, I think without question is something that makes it fun. And I know that when you think about, there's all different ways that you can look at it in terms of a coach and scheduling and play into it and how you try to prepare your team for the tournament. And I know I've always kind of been of the mindset that I'd rather have a little bit worse record during the season and be more prepared to play in the state tournament. So maybe play some tougher teams. Again, it depends on what stage your program's at. But nonetheless, I still think that ultimately, to me, both as a player and as a coach, the tournament was always kind of what you were pointing to, and you wanted to sort of be peaking and figuring out if your team was going to be at its best in March, and that's when you could really have fun and make a run, whether to the district finals or the regional or whatever, if you're lucky enough to get down to the state. So when you look at now, having had a couple years under your belt, what do you think is the key to being able to build a sustainable high school program? Because it's not the same at the college level where recruiting is kind of the lifeblood of your program. And if you can be a good recruiter, you're going to continue to get good players in the door. And then it's maybe a little bit easier to sustain. So how do you try to build that same thing in your program there at Walsh to be able to have sustainable success over the long term? What do you think is going to be the key to being able to do that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we talked about before, just trying to, every day we come in and like I tell them, life's for the grinders. Like we come in and try to put in the work. And again, try to make it fun too. Now, like I said, there are certain aspects of being good that aren't necessarily, quote unquote fun, but being good is fun, and coming in and being willing to go through the things that it takes to be good every day, being able to do that heavy lift every day, is kind of what we're looking for. And the same thing academically, guys who want to go in and work hard in the classroom, and then basketball just becomes kind of an extension of that. We just kind of come out and we're going to endeavor to be as good as we can be every day. And then if we can do that and keep getting better, I think at Walsh we have good enough players most years that we can be good. And, if we get a year where we have, a special player, then we have a chance to be really, really good. But I think year in and year out, we have a chance to compete at a high level. And so that's what we're trying to do, is just kind of that mindset of, this is what we do, every day, whether we lost last night or won last night, we'll come in and kind of do a post-mortem on it, and then, back at it, kind of getting ready for the next one. And to me, that's sort of it, just kind of that everyday attitude that says that we're going to, if we've lost 3 in a row or won 3 in a row, you walked into our practice, hopefully you wouldn't really know, you'd see us out there doing what we do, working hard and getting ready to be the best team we can be that day, and be the best team we can be tomorrow and the day after that. And I think if you can get that going, you'll give yourself a chance every year. So
to talk a little bit about the day-to-day, how do you put together a practice plan? What's your philosophy for organizing that? Do you do it by time? Do you do it by, these are the skills we need to work on? Just what's your process for putting the practice plan together? And then what does your typical practice plan look like? Let's say on maybe a preseason practice. So not maybe in preparation for a specific opponent, but just maybe in the the 3 weeks of kind of opening the season where we are now.
Sure. So there are 3 or 4 things that I think are really important, and we're going to do most of those things most days. Now, as the season goes along, toward the end, we'll probably do one of those things each day, and then kind of start getting into team stuff faster to work on whatever it is we need to work on, our press breaker or get ready for our opponent. But at this time of year, kind of the rote activities of basketball, I say to the guys all the time, the stuff that 2 equal teams play, the team that are better at these things are going to win the game most of the time. Now, if the other team has the 4 best players on the floor, it's not going to matter what we do. But even to that end, my guys hear me say this all the time. Part of what I was talking about before, kind of that attitude is, look, if we played the Boston Celtics 22 times, we'd go 0-22. And if we played, a 4th grade CYO team, we'd go 22-0. But we're not going to let that impact us too much. We're going to go out and try and play our best game every night, regardless of who we're playing. So to that end, that's what we're trying to do, is build up to being able to play our best game. And a lot of that is some of those, again, kind of road activities, which I think are like 90% of basketball. Now, the reason you play is kind of the other 10% where there's some, individual expression and some ability to go do those things. But again, all things being equal, the team that closes out the best, the team that boxes out the best, the team that passes the ball the best, is going to win the game, again, assuming 2 relatively evenly matched teams. And so we spend a lot of time working on those things in the preseason and then build them into kind of a team concept. But we'll start with, just 1 or 2 guys in a drill working on whatever technique it is we're trying to work on, and then try to kind of build that out as we go. So, and I don't reinvent the wheel either. We did 4-man shell today. It's an oldie but goodie, a tried and true, way to spend some time trying to work on your defense. So that's kind of how I think about it. And so, like I say, as the season progresses, we're going to work on at least one of those things probably almost every day. So we're still going to be doing rebounding drills. We're still going to be doing passing drills. And again, we might not do all of them every day as the season progresses, but we'll do at least one of them. The day before we play our last tournament game, we'll be doing one of them at least. Kind of whatever it is that we think we need to get better at. And again, it's worked well for me. I think our teams continue to get better. And some of that is we stick with kind of, I think, those core things throughout the entire season. We don't ever stop.
Yeah, I think that's a key.
Boxing out or rebounding or things like that.
I really do think that's a key. And I've said this before on the pod that I feel like myself, one of the things that I've spent a lot of time in the last few years coaching my own kids, and a little different situation where you're coaching, more of a youth team and you're practicing once or twice a week. But I find myself, because I'm always looking at stuff on the internet or talking to coaches now through the podcast, I'm always getting new ideas. And so I tend to be the guy who kind of chases after, I'm like, oh, I want to try that, or oh, I want to try this. But I think that what you just described in keeping something as part of your core philosophy and saying, look, these are the 4 things that we need to do really, really well because these are the things that impact winning, and we're going to do them day in and day out and get really good at them. To me, I think if you're going to sustain success, which we just talked about, I think that is a great way to be able to do that, is just by continuing to focus on the fundamentals and do it day after day after day after day. And eventually it just becomes ingrained. It becomes habit. We all know that when you have good habits, usually leads to good results. Again, as you said, if you're playing against opponents that are of a similar talent level as you. So
yeah, I mean, my guys laugh. I tell them on my tombstone it'll read guards rebound. We spend a lot of time working on those types of things that make the difference in these games that sometimes come down to a possession or 2.
Absolutely. All right, we're coming up towards an hour and a half, Kevin. So I want to wrap up with my question that's kind of become the traditional ending of the podcast at this point, and that is, I want you to share, one, what you think your biggest challenge is moving forward, and let's kind of throw COVID to the side and just imagine that we're going to be back to normal at some point. At some point, we're going to get there. So your biggest challenge moving forward, and then the second part is your biggest joy. What gets you out of the bed in the morning, excited to come in and go to work and work with your kids there at Walsh?
Yeah. Our biggest challenge, if you're talking about sort of success of the team, our biggest challenge is kind of, location where we're at and the teams that we play and the teams that we have to beat. There's such good coaches, such good players. Like it's really, it's hard night after night after night. I mean, you got to play well to have a chance. with a lot of the games that we play. And so, again, just kind of preparing for that grind every day and being ready to go out and play at our best every day, I think is challenging. It's hard to say, okay, we just played somebody, we just played St. V and now we're playing Benedictine tonight, or we're playing, like I say, we played Shaker and then went down to play St. X and Elder, where, every night. And like you say, it gets you battle tested, but it's a challenge. And when things don't go well, when you lose kind of 3 in a row, sticking with it and all those types of things.
That's tough. That's tough as a head coach. I completely understand.
Yeah. No doubt. And again, I try very hard to say, okay, to show up in a good mood the next day and say, we're going to learn what we need to learn. We're going to get better at what we need to get better at. But, but when, again, things aren't going well and you've got two more really tough games coming up that week, it's, that can definitely be a challenging aspect of it. The thing that gets me out of bed to go coach them, I like our kids. I like them so much. I like being around them. It's why I do it. Like, it's like, I'm happy that I get to have a positive impact on them. That is important to me. And I'm really happy that I think I do that and do that pretty well. But really for me, it's more about me. Like, I'm really, like, it's fun for me to go be around them. Really, that's what this is. I mean, I'm just kidding, sort of, but it's, but I do mean it when it's just a fun endeavor. It's just, I coach because it's just so much fun to do it. It's so much fun to be around our kids at Walsh, especially. They're just fun to be around. They're fun to work with. And so I feel like, we get better as a team. And then at the end, we've been able to kind of celebrate these really good years and the friendships that we've made and the hard work that we've put in. That's manifested itself in very real ways. And we've been able to get kind of some signature wins in the tournament the last couple of years. And just getting the excitement of being around, to be able to be around that every day, and guys that, want to be good and want to work at it. And it just makes it, I love doing it. It's why I do it. I really enjoy it. So, that would be my answer. Just getting to work with them every day is I hope, I believe and hope that it's a good thing for them, but I know it's a good thing for me. And so that will keep me continuing to do it, I think, for the foreseeable future.
Absolutely. That makes a ton of sense. I think the experience that you're providing to them and that they're providing to you, it's kind of a win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
That you're getting that experience, that you're getting to work with kids that want to be there, that want to be a part of what you're trying to build. And conversely, you draw a lot from them just by them bringing their energy and enthusiasm. And that's the kind of situation that I think any coach wants to be in, where you feel like it's a positive experience for everybody that's involved in it. And 10 years from now or 20 years from now, when they look back, when you look back, it's going to be nothing but fond memories. And as you've said a couple times during the podcast, it's fun to be good. And there's some things that you have to do that maybe aren't fun in order to be good. But I'm guessing that just like anybody else, when you look back on your basketball experiences, both as a player and as a coach, and I do the same, that when I look back, I tend to remember the good things, and I tend to remember your teammates, and you tend to remember the positives, and some of the things that maybe were a little less fun or a little less enjoyable, those things kind of melt away, and you're left with the good memories. And to me, that's really what the basketball experience is about, both from a playing standpoint and from a coaching standpoint. That's really what you're trying to provide to kids and to yourself. Again, if you're coaching and it's not fun and you're not enjoying yourself, then it's probably time to go do something else. So
yeah, no doubt.
Kevin, we cannot thank you. We cannot thank you enough for joining us tonight and spending an hour and a half of your time talking to our audience and talking with us. It's been a lot of fun getting a chance to know you. We're looking forward to being able to follow your program here in the future, and we can't thank you enough for that. I want to give you a chance before we wrap up to just share where people can find out more about your program, maybe share your social media or the website where people can find out more if they want to reach out to you and just maybe talk some basketball.
Yeah. Anytime. Always happy to talk to anybody certainly about basketball or whatever else they'd like to talk about. And the best place to find us is just at our school website right now, just walshjesuit.org, and you can find me on the website there and find out about our team and our schedule. And anytime we're around, I'd love to, anybody wants to ever come to a game or anything like that, just email me and just let me know that you heard the podcast or something like that, and definitely leave you some tickets and if we're ever coming to the area that you're at. But Yeah, it's a fun fraternity to be a part of, the coaching community, and happy to be here tonight. And I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Absolutely. It's been a lot of fun, Kevin. Can't thank you enough. And to everyone out there, thanks for listening, and we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks. If you have an existing podcast or are looking to launch your own pod but aren't sure where to start, the team at My Podcast Manager can help. Our podcast team works behind the scenes so you can do what you do best. We'll help you launch your podcast, make it sound great, and free up your time for the more enjoyable parts of podcasting. If you're ready to put your podcast editing, production, and promotion on autopilot with a trusted team of podcasting professionals, visit mypodcastmanager.com to get started.
Thanks for listening to the Hoop Heads podcast, presented by Head Start Basketball.